Hi, I'm Daniel Butler. Welcome to another edition of America's Dumbest Criminals. On this episode of America's Dumbest Criminals.
Golly gee, who's that? In fact, wait, blue shirt?
A thwarted thief in Easy Off. A channeled chicken in Flew the Coop.
Now I caught it. Just want to eat it. Okay. No big deal.
Helena Handbag gets hooked. A dunce is door jam. All this and more coming up on America's Dumbest Criminals. Here's your host, Daniel Butler. After getting away with a series of local robberies, this dumb criminal finally got his act cleaned up, as you'll see by this surveillance footage. The dirty rat played his usual game. Enter the store, attempt to overpower the clerk, and then take the money. However, this quick-thinking employee grabbed a nearby can of oven cleaner and managed to give the hulking henchman a facial that he won't soon forget. Blinded and in great pain, the crook was easily apprehended and taken into custody by the local police, who made sure that the blurred bonehead didn't drive or operate any heavy machinery for at least 10 to 20 years. People claim to see unidentified flying objects all the time. However, this dumb criminal had proof, and she was going to let the world know about it. A woman in New Mexico decided to stop into a market and pick up a little chicken for dinner. She decided to bypass the checkout counter and head directly for her car. She sped off across the street, then reparked her car and ran into the bushes to hide from the numerous witnesses staring at her from the other side of the street. When the police showed up, they found the foul woman curled up in the shrubbery, clutching her grub. When the officers asked her where she got the chicken, she told them that she was walking along and it just flew out of the sky and landed in her arms.
Okay. No big deal. Just a little chicken.
Okay, why don't you do me a favor and turn around for a second?
She was taken down to the station and asked to fill out a full report of her unidentified flying object. Oh, the chicken is falling. The chicken is falling. Let's take a look at what happens when a pit stop turns into a putt stop. Officer J.D. Bennis of Garland, Texas, tells us of a situation where this dumb criminal's meltdown was not only mental.
I saw a car parked where it shouldn't be parked. It wasn't normally there, so I started backtracking. And I see a man walking behind parked cars in this business area, and he's kind of bent over like he's carrying something. So I park my car and get out and start watching him. Well, he's carrying a styrofoam ice chest, and he's siphoning gas out of cars because his cars run out of gas.
The officer observed our gas-guzzling goof make 2 more stops before heading back to his own car to fill her up.
Well, he starts running faster and faster and faster. When I catch up to him, he's at his car, which is out of gas, and he's holding the metal handle from the ice chest in his hand because he didn't know that gasoline dissolves styrofoam. He was using the styrofoam to put the gasoline in, but it started to melt, and he was trying to get to his car before the styrofoam completely melted. So he ended up with his pants drenched with gasoline and a big ball of styrofoam and the metal handle, and that's all he had left.
Dumb criminals tend to panic when things don't go the way they plan, like this Manic Mugger in West Virginia. His quick remedy helped stop him from ever having to think like that again. Seems that a pocket scientist ran into a little trouble when he tried to mug someone that only had $12 on him. Being the quick wit that he obviously was, he had the man write him a check for $300 and fled the scene. However, when he got to the bank and tried to cash it, the teller realized that there wasn't enough money to cover the check and also noted that this particular check had been reported as stolen. She played it cool and had the man wait while she called the cops, who quickly arrived on the scene and bounced the bonehead into their cruiser and deposited him directly into jail.
You have the right to remain seated.
And now, Crimes of the Week with Daniel Butler and Beaumont Bacon.
With me is the lean, mean Beaumont Bacon, and I'm Danielle Butler. This is where we treat foolish felons,
Brainless burglars.
moronic muggers,
Ridiculous robbers.
and loudmouth losers with the disrespect they deserve.
You're dissing them, man.
Here we
Get
are.
down.
But you know, I believe you shouldn't hide your light under a bushel.
No, let it shine.
Unless, of course, it's a dim bulb. A Michigan patrolman was approached by a local juvenile troublemaker who wished to show his buddies the back seat of the patrolman's police car.
Oh my God, you're kidding. Open mouth.
Insert foot. Apparently, the youth wanted to show his friends the neat carvings he'd made with his switchblade in the backseat of the police car last time he was arrested.
Reinsert foot, bigger foot. Put
Large.
a shoe on it and stick it in there.
But-
Nothing wrong with making a name for yourself, though.
Well, he did. The destructive Da Vinci was able to admire his handiwork at length as he was escorted back to the station where he was charged with malicious destruction of police property.
Good. If I was his mother, I'd take his toys away.
You should.
Well, this Michigan moron was arrested for carrying a concealed gun in his car. He denied the charge and refused the assistance of a public defender. Representing himself at the bench trial, he couldn't wait to take the stand in his own defense. When asked by the prosecutor if he knew about the gun,
Here it comes. I can feel it.
he calmly replied, "I know the officer didn't see the gun he's talking about because when I dropped it, I kicked it back way under my seat."
That was real smart. Yep.
Giving credence to the statement, an attorney who defends himself has a fool for a client.
I would have liked to see him cross-examine himself, though. That would be good.
How are you doing? I don't know. I didn't take the gun.
A private pilot, aptly named Captain Flintstone, was unclear on the concept of silence is golden. This songbird's wings were clipped when he was sentenced to 4 months in jail for tying up a frequency used by air traffic controllers, belting out, "Flintstones, meet the Flintstones, they're a modern Stony family," repeatedly for 20 minutes. Flying Freddy drowned out all contact with other aircraft, proving himself a menace not only on the ground but in the air as well.
He was not asked back for an encore there, was he?
Yep.
And now, Daniel, our favorite portion, Vidiots of the Week. This dumb criminal picked the wrong auto repair shop to rob. He knew that all the tools would be there, but he didn't plan on the owner being there as well. Seems that our slippery snake had cased out the garage for a few days and told some friends that he was going to rob it. He waited until the garage was closed late one afternoon and decided to make his move. He managed to jimmy the garage door open and slide underneath, but didn't expect to find the owner of the shop waiting for him. The owner, holding a very large crowbar, had heard that his garage might be robbed and was waiting inside. He told the creepy crawler not to move until the police arrived. Needless to say, the cops weren't just pulling the guy's leg when they dragged him out from under the garage door and loaded him into their cruiser for a ride downtown.
It's what, like a
Downtown.
mail slot for dumb criminals.
It's-
here. Folks, pay very close attention to this next crime because we just don't get it. An officer from Kalamazoo, Michigan was on his way to serve a warrant. As he approached the house, the suspect backed out of his driveway and drove away.
That's him. That's my warrant suspect.
As the suspect drove by, the deputy made a U-turn and pulled up behind him, turning on his lights and sirens. However, instead of pulling over, the man sped up, but only by 10 miles per hour. He was now doing 45 in a 35-mile-per-hour zone. After about 5 minutes, he finally pulled over. The deputy asked the suspect why he had sped up instead of stopping, to which the dumb criminal replied,
"I thought if I sped up, you wouldn't stop me."
"We just don't get it. Is it possible that this is too dumb for our show? Nah." The boys down at the Cliché Crime Lab aren't entirely convinced that a picture is worth exactly 1,000 words, but luckily for this police officer from Brooksville, Florida, the trade-in value was worth at least 3 words: "I did it." Investigating a convenience store burglary in Brooksville, Florida, the officer quickly followed a trail from the store to the door of his prime suspect. The only problem was a lack of hard evidence tying him to the crime. He returned to the station and used the address to pull the man's file.
Hey, Jack, the convenience store is a block away from you. You never been to the convenience store before?
No. Never been there.
Okay, well, how come when I talked to people that were there, they described you as running off with all the food? And now I find food at your house.
No way. I didn't do it. I mean, why does it always have to be me?
Getting desperate, the officer pulled out a 2-year-old booking photo of the man, clearly dated as such.
They take pictures of everyone that enters and leaves. I want to show you something. I want you to tell me what you think. This is all the pictures today taken of everyone entering and leaving. Look here at this one. Golly gee, who's that? In fact, wait, blue shirt, dark pants, glasses. Who's that look like to you? Straight out of the video camera. Damn. Okay, Jack, just stand right there. Turn around, put your hands behind your back.
This picture was also worth at least 1,000 days in the slammer. You know what they say? He ain't savvy, he's my brother. This sleazy sibling had gone to an apartment looking for his brother. His brother no longer lived there, but making the most of every opportunity, the fraternal fiend checked out the apartment and liked what he saw. He tied up the ex-roommate and took off with a few personal items. Our soon-to-be vindicated victim called the police. What the bogus brother didn't count on was the fact that the man he had just robbed was still friends with the thief's brother. They knew who their man was, but how to get him.
Wait a minute. Kenny left the name and phone number of his brother in case there was an emergency.
The prodigal son was promptly arrested.
Coming up next on America's Dumbest Criminals.
You guys in this purse cannot touch me, all right?
Map Man is Robin. Pick a car, any car, and slice of justice.
You, step away from the remote now.
This dumb criminal had a choice. And like all dumb criminals, he made the wrong one. A security guard in Jacksonville, Florida, spotted a man breaking into cars in the hotel parking lot where he worked. He promptly called 911. The police apprehended the suspect immediately, but the suspect protested, stating that he was a guest of the hotel and that he was just going to get something out of his cousin's car.
Now, here came the test. The police officer said, "Which car is your cousin's car?" At which point the suspect pointed to a red 4x4.
The security guard had to laugh and say, "Ha, are you kidding? That's my car." The booby prize for this choice-challenged crook was a free trip to the county jail. You know, when it comes to pizza delivery, the gang here at America's Dumbest Criminals sticks to the one company which suits us best, Domino's. All the toppings are great, too, especially the stupid sausage, the pea-brain pepperoni, and the asinine anchovies. But if you want to see a slice of life from the dumb side, or what we call the lower crust, take a bite out of this next story from Milwaukee. These men robbed a pizza delivery driver, relieving him of some cash and a few pies, but then he forgot to cheese it. With a description from the victim, local police were surprised to find one of the robbers standing nearby, enjoying his cut. The ravenous robber was delivered piping hot to jail in 30 minutes or less, or of course he would have been free. Even dumb criminals have bad days. Usually it's because they just happen to be more stupid on a certain day than they normally are, as you'll see. In San Jose, California, a guy robbed a bank and left the scene in his vehicle. A short distance away, the goofball was involved in an auto accident, but insisted on waiting at the scene until an officer showed up to make a report. The robber then asked the other party to hold his jacket while he made a call at a nearby payphone. The other guy happened to notice a gun and cash stuffed in the pockets. When the officer arrived on the scene, the guy holding the jacket immediately handed the coat over to him and pointed out the contents. The officer also was able to identify the other car as the one matching that of the one used in the robbery. He quickly arrested the guy and then asked him why he had stayed at the accident site, to which the stubborn stooge replied that the accident was not his fault and he didn't want his insurance rates to go up. Like we say on this show, there's no right way to do a wrong thing, as this dumb car thief in Idaho found out. According to the bailiff, the suspect quickly proved that while his geography may be decent, his preservation instinct is almost non-existent.
Sir, for the record, can you state your name for the court one more time?
I already told you, you guys in this purse cannot touch me, all right? I stole the car in Ada County.
Okay. Ah! Your Honor, I know we've just begun this case with the prosecution arrest.
Wait a minute.
Still, the thief did not get the last word. The judge did, and it was guilty.
Go back to the couch and assume the position.
We have often found that when being pursued by the law, criminals have been known to do, shall we say, dumb things. Let's look at this one case in particular. This regretting racer thought she could get away with it by ducking into the nearest neighborhood and hiding in the nearest driveway. The only problem is that the officer in pursuit just happened to know that driveway very well, and he should. You see, the woman had just turned into his driveway and pulled up outside his own house.
Ma'am, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ticket you for speeding.
Don't be ridiculous. I've been here all the time. Stop harassing me. Leave me alone. If you don't believe me, ask my friend.
Well, ma'am, I could do that, but I don't think it's going to help your case very much because, you see, this is my wife. Hi, honey.
Hi.
That moronic maneuver sure left her on a road to nowhere. A female store manager, let's call her Helena, filed a report about a designer purse that had been stolen from her boutique. Its value, $7,900. But when police studied the store surveillance tape, they discovered that Helena filed more than the daily receipts that day before she left the store. You can see her standing there in front of the display where the pricey purse was perched. Try saying that 3 times. She takes it, then makes her way around the counter and slips the sequin sack into her shopping bag. Finally, Helena makes her way out of the store, casually clenching her classy clutch in her clammy claws. Suffice it to say, Helena got sacked from the store. Well, our bungling buffet is now closing, but please join us next week as we serve up another heaping helping of hapless hoodlums here on America's Dumbest Criminals.
On the next episode of America's Dumbest Criminals.
Designated driver.
A couple of boobs in The Bolder, the Stupider. A crook cracks a smile in Moon Over First Fed. Some brawling brothers cool off. A reckless road flasher.
Put that in D as in depart.
Hey, son, pull over. Pull it over, son.
The laughs just keep coming on the next episode of America's Dumbest Criminals.
This occurred to one of our detectives in 1986. He was investigating a robbery at a Burger King restaurant. The suspect had come into the restaurant, pulled the robbery, but all of the people there recognized him. And his problem was he was a paint sniffer, and he was a former employee of the Burger King. Well, in order to get his courage up to pull the robbery, he'd gone out and sniffed a bunch of paint. Then he went to the Burger King to pull the robbery. When he put on his ski mask, he pulled it so hard that he ripped open the eye hole and it uncovered his whole face. So he stood there with his face hanging out, pulling the robbery, but since he had a gun, they were afraid to say, "Hey, Bob, we know it's you." So he left the robbery. The officers went, they said, "Yeah, here's his name, here's his address, here's his phone number. He's the one that robbed us." When the detective confronted him, he recovered the ski mask, and he asked the guy, he said, "Well, is this the ski mask that you used?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "Well, how did you wear it?" And he pulled it out, he pulled it down exactly the same way. So they took a picture of him for the mugshot with him with a ski mask pulled down around his face. It was a real brain.
Okay.
This is another officer story. He stopped a man for running a red light. When he got up there, in the guy's shirt pocket, he had a roach clip with the marijuana cigarette in it sticking out of his pocket. So he just reached in and pulled the roach clip with the joint out of his pocket and then asked the man to step out, and he arrested him for possession of marijuana. And the guy had a dog in the car with him, and the officer had put the suspect in the car, was back talking to him, doing some of his paperwork, and the officer was worried about the dog. So he went back up to check on the dog and petted the dog and made sure he was okay, and there was an animal control officer coming to take the dog. And he just went back up to pet the dog and then went back to the car. When he sat down in the car, the guy leaned up to him and said, "Okay, I know you found him, but I don't want to go back to prison, so could you just throw all the Quaaludes away?" And the officer said, "What Quaaludes?" "The ones you just found under the dashboard." "I'll be right back." He went back up. He hadn't found the Quaaludes under the dashboard until the guy told him about it. He just went up there to check on his dog to make sure the dog was okay.
So what was the difference in that sentence? He was going from...
He had gone from a Class B misdemeanor of possession of marijuana to getting his parole revoked because he was on parole for possession of Quaaludes. But if he'd kept his mouth shut, there's a good chance we never would have found the dope. If crooks would just get smart and when they leave the house, sit down on a Post-it note and write out, okay, here's the story for tonight, and pass it around to each other, and they would memorize it, everything would be okay. But when we stop them, nobody has the same story, and that's what ends up, getting them sent to jail.